Thank you for staying with us. From forced and early marriages to the physical, mental, or sexual assault, 1 in 3 Nigerian women and 10% of men have experienced physical or sexual violence from their intimate or non-intimate partner, a report by the World Health Organization says. In Lagos State, Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu has declared a zero-tolerance policy and put in place the Lagos State Domestic and Sexual Violence Agency, where victims can voice out and get justice. With fear of stigmatization and discrimination in the society, the Lagos State government assented to a sex offenders registered bill on the 20th of September 2021, which protects the rights of victims while ensuring that offenders face the full wrath of the law. Well, joining us via Zoom is the Executive Secretary of Lagos State Domestic and Sexual Violence Agency, Titilola Vival Adeni. Good morning. Thank you for joining us on TVC Breakfast.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Right. We can indeed see Lagos State's zero tolerance for violence or domestic violence or sexual violence against women, because recently 3 persons, their names were, offenders rather, were published by the state. And a lot of persons say yes, justice have been done or seem to be done, but there are also those who are questioning the extent of justice being done in this matter with regards to the impact on the victim.
Definitely. So, first of all, thank you for having me. When we're looking at justice, of course, we're looking at justice from the lens of the survivor. We're looking at justice from the lens of the government, i.e., the government, yes, and then justice for the society. When we're talking about sexual violence, we're talking about crimes, isn't it? And so a person that has experienced violence needs to have justice, needs to get justice. That's the survivor. The state, if a crime is committed against the state needs to get justice. And the society also needs to know that there are, consequences for actions and perpetrators will be held accountable. So even as we proceed with criminal justice, ensuring that the perpetrators are held accountable, as a survivor-centered agency, we are also focused on what is justice for the survivor. And in most cases of sexual violence, especially when it comes to defilement, that's having sexual intercourse with a person below the age of 18, a child, justice for the parents, most times, is actually they want the perpetrator to be held accountable.
All right. And looking at the sexual offenders register, since it took effect in Lagos, how would you measure the impact that it has made towards the whole agenda of curbing to the barest minimum gender-related offenses?
So since 2021, when the Domestic and Sexual Violence Agency law was established, the Domestic and Sexual Violence Agency law came into force, the essence of the sex offenders register has come alive. Please note that we actually had a sex offenders register since 2014, but we didn't have a statutory mandate. We didn't have a statutory impetus to actually publish details of sex convicts. But since 2021, we've started publishing details of sex convicts. And the reason for this is actually to put the spotlight on the perpetrators. For so long, the spotlight has been placed on the survivor. Ada was raped by Ade, for instance. What this is doing, this public naming and shaming of sex convicts, these are people that have been convicted by a court of competent jurisdiction. What this is doing is it's sending that deterrence message. It's letting society know that the culture of impunity will no longer be tolerated. It's letting everybody know that there are consequences for actions. And it's also letting everybody know that there is no hiding place for perpetrators. Aside from publishing the details of sex convicts on our social media handles and informing media houses of the development, the law also makes us, we have a duty to notify, to issue letters of advisory to the communities where these perpetrators were previously residing. And so if we have a perpetrator that previously resided in K2 local government, for instance, or Kushope local government, we issue a letter of advisory to the chairman. We also write to the community leaders, as well as the traditional rulers. What we post on social media, we print in the form of a poster, attaching, and these posters are attached to these different letters. And we encourage the local government, we encourage the traditional rulers to paste these posters at their different locations so that the information is spread and that people that perhaps may have known that perpetrator will identify that perpetrator on the poster and know that, okay, this person committed this offense and justice has been served. So ultimately, it's to send that deterrence message and end the culture of impunity, because that's really part of the component that allows the occurrence of sexual violence to fester and to thrive.
But some will say that that is just one aspect, because there's also the culture of silence, where everyone is ready to cover up this person even before the victim is able to get justice. What are we also doing with regards to that?
Well, we like data. If you look at our trajectory in the past 5-6 years, we've seen steady increase of reporting, formal reporting of cases of domestic and sexual violence. And that is a testament to the fact that people have more faith in the system. People are more encouraged to report formally to institutions, to government, to non-governmental organizations, to the law enforcement, to the health facilities. With the increase in reporting, it's a testament to the fact that there's increased confidence in the system. And so we are gradually, it's a journey, we're on a journey. We're gradually breaking that culture of silence, encouraging people to speak up, speak out, report timelessly. It's important when we're dealing with sexual violence. There is a phenomenon referred to as the golden hour period. It's important to report timelessly, perhaps within 72 hours post-trauma, so that we can collect, preserve evidence, and the survivor can access free medical attention. So yes, we do agree. There is a culture of silence. There is the victim blaming, victim shaming, but with the increase of awareness, increase in political will that is palpable, amazing work that community NGOs are doing at the community level, we are seeing that we're well on our way in breaking the culture of silence.
In addition to what you have said, from an insider perspective, you've been a loud voice in this advocacy. But looking at the alarming trends of cases that we see even within Lagos, despite all the efforts, what can you tell us about how hopeful we should be as observers from this side, as observers, yes, from this side? How hopeful should we be that this menace is indeed coming to an end?
So we believe that it's because of heightened advocacy, heightened awareness. That is what is responsible for the increase in reporting. We know that these issues have always been there. Domestic violence, incest, rape, sexual violence, defilement, they've always been with us. But what we're seeing now is more increase in formal and informal reporting. People going on social media to report, people reporting to the police, reporting to the different responder agencies. So we do not believe that there is a cause for alarm. Why? Because when you heighten awareness, you have more people reporting. What we actually are working towards is ensuring we're able to prevent, because that's our mandate, our statutory mandate, to prevent or reduce the likelihood of this even occurring in the first instance. And then when it does occur, we're able to activate the whole referral pathway for the survivor to be able to access justice. So we're very heavy on prevention. And that is why we have different programs tailored towards the different strata of society. We're engaging children, engaging the youth, engaging university students, engaging the religious leaders, engaging community leaders, engaging NGOs. We have mainstreamed SGBV response into the health sector, into the security sector, so that we are able to create messaging that we believe would be critical in preventing the occurrence of sexual and gender-based violence in the first instance. So yes, we have a duty to respond, but I believe we also have a higher duty to prevent.
Some would say that's quite a Herculean task when we talk about prevention, because there are some persons who do not even know or understand what abuse is. They feel that when someone is abusing them, it's a normal thing that perhaps because they have seen that being passed down from one generation to the other, and so it has become a lifestyle. Talk to us about educating such persons.
Indeed. You know, we are all a product of our socialization. What we witness growing up, how the values, the attributes that have been inculcated in us, it's all from the home. And as you rightly said, if a man saw his father physically abuse his mom over 15, 20 years, and this man now did not receive psychosocial support, does not know any better, it is very, very likely that if that person is married, this violent behavior is what is going to be exhibited, because this is what he is accustomed to. This is his socialization. This is what he believes. In fact, if you tell such a person that this is violence, you're going to have an argument, because this is what he knows. This is what is ingrained in him. So yes, we do agree that these issues can be intergenerational. We do agree that there is a thing referred to as the vicious cycle of abuse, and we actually have perpetrators that have confided in us and told us that this is what they saw growing up, and that their mothers never left the abuse. So because I gave her a slap, why is she leaving? Why is she packing her things? Why is she going to her parents' house? Why are her parents receiving her? That is their mindset. The truth of the matter is that no one is born an abuser. Abuse is a learned behavior. And if a person is willing, such behavior can be unlearned. And so that's why we place heavy emphasis on prevention. When we go to university, we engage university students because they are courting, they are looking at prospective suitors. We let them know what are the red flags that you should look out for. Because at least 60% of survivors of domestic violence have told us that they saw the signs during courtship. But perhaps they felt that, I would change him or I would change her, or it's not that big of a deal. But by the time you're courting and you're equipped with information regarding red flags, signs to look out for, behaviors that can be tolerated, behaviors that you must run, we believe that will go a long way in preventing. We've also introduced the compulsory premarital counseling, and this is in partnership with the registrars of marriage. We know that people who are intending to solemnize their union go to the local government and they have counseling. So what we've done now is to partner with the institution and introduce premarital counseling so that part of the requirement before the certificate is issued is that this intended couple will go through at least 3 sessions of compulsory premarital counseling. These are just different scientific ways we have introduced in ensuring that people see signs, they are informed before they make that decision of I do. And that in a unfortunate situation where they are in the relationship, they are in the marriage for whatever reason or the other, they are encouraged to seek professional counseling.
Yes, we understand that you're not a court, and that there is an start and end date to your work in crimes of this nature. But what can you tell us about the mind of the abuser? For instance, now we can say, okay, in this case, now a man or a male, for instance, because advocates have also said that a percentage of these perpetrators were abused themselves. So, like you said, it's a vicious cycle. But in terms of reparation, for instance, in terms of trying to demystify further the subject of abuse, this time around from the offender's point of view, what's the state government doing in this regard?
Definitely. So Sometime in 2016, we partnered with the Nigerian Prison Service, as they were referred to then, now the Nigerian Correctional Service. We wanted to know, we wanted to profile sex convicts. We wanted to know the mindset, what goes on in the mind of a sex offender. And we were able to engage 143 of these sex convicts that time. And our research, our findings were remarkable. 80.5% of them told us that they had been abused by the age of 6. They had been exposed to unhealthy sexual relationships. And unfortunately, they did not receive any form of psychosocial support. And so they started to abuse others. 60.5% of them told us that they did not know that having sexual intercourse with a child was life imprisonment. Many of them thought it was equated into stealing. They thought they would just get a slap on their wrist. About 50.5% of them had at least a school-cert education. So that debunked the myth that it's only uneducated people that perpetrate this act. We also found out that at least 70.5% of these perpetrators knew their survivor. So these were people that were in a fiduciary relationship with, perhaps uncles, fathers, people that the parents entrusted their children to, perhaps school bus drivers or neighbors. So it debunked that myth that the perpetrator is some monster lurking in the dark, waiting to pounce on our children. For us, the game changer from that research also showed us that none of the perpetrators said it was what the victim or their survivor were that made them perpetrate that act. So that debunked the myth of whether mode of dressing determines whether or not the survivor will be raped. And what that did for us is it made us start to shift our attention on the male folk. It made us start to shift our attention on the boys. And that now gave birth to different programs that we have for the male folk. So since that time, we've developed the King's Club Initiative. The King's Club Initiative is one that we have boys in selected schools in Lagos State. We've developed a curriculum. This is in partnership with the Ministry of Education, where we engage boys over the period of 6 weeks on these issues: positive masculinity, anger management, transitioning from boy to man, talking about gender-based violence, talking about gender equity, gender equality, right? And then we start to see a change in behavior in these boys. And after the period of 6 weeks, they are inducted. And then they now, by virtue of their behavior, they have other boys who want to join the club. And so that's part of, the benefits of having research. So you can speak authoritatively about issues, and then it helps you to plan. So yes, we do agree that there is a need for us to, look at the root cause. Why do people perpetrate this act? I must also say at this juncture that last year we were also concerned about people who may be released, back into the society. It's not everybody that is serving a life imprisonment term. Some people are in the correctional facility for perhaps sexual assault, sexual harassment, which both of them carry 3 years imprisonment. So such a person will eventually come back into the society. But we found out that with issues of sexual violence, there's high recidivism. And so we partnered again with the Nigerian Correctional Service, where we introduced a rehabilitation curriculum. We had our clinical psychologists and psychiatrists go into the facilities and engage willing sex convicts on these different modules, expose them on coping skills, changing and having a behavioral mindset over the period of 3 months. And we are hoping, that this is one of the ways that we've been able to, we'll continue to rehabilitate sex convicts so that we reduce the likelihood of recidivism upon their reintegration back into the society.
Interesting. Let's come back to the victim. Some develop Stockholm Syndrome. I wonder how the state is also addressing that aspect.
Indeed. There is I forget the name, it's called trauma bonding, yes. So that's a situation where the victim bonds with the person that is exerting trauma on them, something similar to Stockholm Syndrome. And so we are very, very cognizant of that fact. And, research has even shown that a survivor may leave the relationship up to 5 times. They go, they come back, they go, they come back, before they eventually leave finally. Or some, unfortunately, may not have the opportunity to leave the 6th time because, they've gone to be with their creator. So there is an issue of Stockholm Syndrome. And that is why, as government, we cannot get tired of assisting survivors. But in certain instances, we may have to put our foot down. In a case where it is apparent that death is imminent. And the law actually allows us to do this, the Protection Against Domestic Violence law. It allows us to go to the court and apply for a restraining order without the consent of the survivor. Of course, that is in very exceptional cases because you don't want a situation where you go to court and the survivor is saying, government is trying to break my home. There's no such thing as violence in my home. Everybody is against me and my husband and stuff and things like that. And so in that kind of instance, before we go without the consent of the survivor, we make sure that we're able to explore psychosocial support, provision of therapy to the survivor. And I think this is the point. It's important that as responders, as professionals, we do not blur that line between counseling and advice. Advice is, I advise you to do this. I advise you to stay. I advise you to leave. When a survivor is exposed and receives psychosocial support, therapy, over a period of time, that allows the survivor, that equips the survivor to take a decision for themselves and run. They own it and they run with it. So in a case of Stockholm Syndrome, in a case where there's trauma bonding, we place heavy emphasis on ensuring the survivor is able to receive psychosocial support. And we work with the survivor in their safety plan and assist the survivor in taking a decision that they own and run with. But as I said, there are certain instances where we can insist that we must go to court, obtain a restraining order, or even escalate to the police without the consent of the survivor.
Well, what's the major challenge now amidst the gains the government has made in tackling this menace? What ground remains uncovered or where we need to do more in from the eyes of the stakeholders yourself?
Of course, it's we can never do too much of advocacy. Advocacy, awareness, heightened awareness. At the moment, there is a divide in the society. A part of the society is for the survivor. They encourage survivors to speak their truth. Another segment blames the victim, blames the survivor, shifts the spotlight from the perpetrators onto the survivor. So we need to bridge that gap. We need the society, the entire society, if possible, to be with us in our crusade. Let us support survivors. Let's encourage survivors to report formally and encourage survivors to get justice. And it's not even, let's not look at it as something that is so far off from us. The statistics you reeled out earlier on, 1 in 3, 1 in 4, that means that each of us has somebody that, we know somebody that knows somebody that knows somebody that has experienced or is experiencing violence. What is our response to such a person? Are we encouraging? Are we naming? Are we shaming them? Are we encouraging them to continue to suffer in silence? We all need to have an inward search of our own response, because that goes a long way in determining whether or not such a person would summon the courage and report formally. Of course, we continue to strengthen our operations. In case where we've broken the cult, where we're breaking the culture of silence, encouraging people to speak up and speak out, the institutions must be able to respond appropriately, rise up to the occasion, and ensure justice for survivors. So there is a continuous need, retraining, strengthening our coordination mechanism, ensuring that when survivors break the culture of silence, We stand up, activate the whole welfare pathway, and ensure justice for survivors. We're on a journey. We're on a journey. This is not where we were 10 years ago. We may not be where we're supposed to be, but we are definitely not where we used to be. We're on a journey, we're on a course, and we are committed towards eradicating this menace, reducing it to the barest minimum.
Let me just quickly ask this question before we wrap up our conversation. You spoke about response time, and there's also, if I may put it this way, justice time. Many of the victims look at the time they can get justice and then give up because of the bottlenecks on the way to justice. What is the government doing with regards to that, ensuring that victims get justice in due time?
Definitely. Indeed, justice delayed is justice denied.
Absolutely.
What we're working on right now is, there's a lot of, when we talk about justice, we start from the end, which is the court. But the court is the end. There are different response mechanisms that will be activated before you get to court. And so you have early reporting, collection and preservation of evidence, reporting to the police, investigation by the police, activating the Ministry of Justice, the Directorate of Public Prosecution, and then getting to court. And so, the court truly is the last hope for the common man. And so, yes, we appreciate that the court has a huge responsibility, but all these other institutions also have a responsibility to play in ensuring that the judge is able to dispense justice and dispense justice swiftly. And I don't know, we don't have enough time, but we've identified the problems, the challenges, loopholes in the response chain from the police, Ministry of Justice, and all of that. And we're working with these institutions to bring up, to institutionalize quick response, turnaround time in terms of investigation, in terms of duplication of case file, in terms of charging these cases to court, assignment to the High Court, and of course, delivery of justice. And you know that we have the Special Offences Courts in Lagos State devoted to issues of domestic and sexual violence. And we are hoping that we'll be able to reduce the time it takes now to dispense justice.
And that's a fine place to leave the conversation now. We must thank you, Executive Secretary of Lagos State Domestic and Sexual Violence Agency, Titilola Vivo Adeniyi, for your time on the program.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome.